Shame. That's the word they handed me like a badge I was supposed to wear. At first, it came in whispers. Why is she with him? He's young enough to be her son. She should be embarrassed. Then the whispers grew teeth. Pathetic. Gross. She must be paying him. I tried to ignore it. But shame doesn't need volume. It just needs repetition. And for a while, I believed them. I questioned every smile he gave me. Every hug. Every late night I love you. I asked myself, am I delusional? Is this real? Do I look like a fool to the world? Until one day I caught him staring at me. Not with lust, not with amusement, but with that quiet, soft kind of wonder, like he'd just found his favorite book again, and didn't care if the pages were worn. He walked over, brushed my hair behind my ear, and said the words that shattered every insult I had absorbed. You're not too much. You're not too old. You're not someone I settled for. You're someone I waited for. That was the moment I stopped hiding. Because love like his didn't need defending. It just needed honoring. And that's when I realized I didn't feel shame anymore. I felt pride. When I told my sister about him, she laughed. Not a gentle chuckle. Not the kind of laugh you share when someone surprises you. It was sharp, cold, almost cruel. Are you serious? She said, raising an eyebrow. What could a 20-year-old possibly see in you? I stayed quiet. Because the truth is, her words echoed the voices I hadn't yet silenced inside myself. She looked at me like I'd joined a cult or lost my mind. And maybe I had. Maybe I'd lost my mind enough to fall in love with someone who made me feel seen. We stopped talking after that. She didn't answer my calls, didn't show up to our usual Sunday brunch, didn't ask how I was. Only called once to say I was making a spectacle of myself. I cried after that, not because she rejected him, but because she rejected a version of me that finally felt free. Then came the wedding of our cousin Maria. A big family affair. I didn't want to go, but Eli insisted. You belong there, he said. They need to see you happy. Unapologetically happy. So we went. I wore navy blue. He wore a gray vest and that crooked smile I loved so much. People stared, whispered. But he held my hand like I was the only woman in the room. And then the music changed. Something slow, something classic. He stood up, offered his hand, and said, "Dance with me." I hesitated, but he didn't. He pulled me in one hand at my back, one guiding mine, and we danced. Not perfectly, not like in movies, but like two souls who had nothing left to prove. I didn't realize my sister was watching. She was sitting at a corner table, alone, and her face. It wasn't judgment anymore. It was something closer to awe. After the song ended, she walked up to me. Didn't say anything for a moment. Then quietly, "I've never seen anyone look at you like that." I smiled, tears welling in my eyes. That's how he's always looked at me. She didn't apologize, but she hugged me. And that was enough. Because sometimes the world doesn't need an explanation. It just needs to witness real love, in motion. It wasn't a dramatic moment. No slamming doors, no screaming matches, no ultimatums shouted across the dinner table. It was quieter than that. More painful because of its simplicity. All it took was one family lunch. One look exchanged between my brother and his wife. One snide comment from my aunt about how hard aging can be on the mind. One awkward silence after Eli kissed my cheek in front of everyone. That was when I knew they were never going to accept him. Not as long as I loved him. Not as long as he made me feel alive in a way they no longer understood. Later that night, I sat alone on my porch. Eli came out, sat beside me, said nothing. We didn't need words. Then he looked at me and asked, "Are you okay pretending forever just to keep their comfort intact?" I stared at the moon. And for the first time in my life, I answered a question only for myself, not for others. No. I called my sister the next day. "I won't be coming to Christmas dinner," I said. She didn't ask why. She knew. "But the family isn't a family," I interrupted, "if they only want the version of me that fits their story." There was silence. Then a sigh. "I hope he's worth it." "He is," I said, my voice steady, "because I'm worth it." That weekend, Eli took my hand as we boarded a train. No destination, just escape. We stayed in a tiny cabin in the woods, cooked pasta on a single burner stove, danced barefoot to vinyl records that skipped on every song. And we laughed, my God, how we laughed. Not the laugh of rebellion, but the laugh of someone who finally feels free. People talk about courage like it's armor, like it's something loud, something you wear like a badge. But for me, courage looked like reaching across the table, grabbing the hand of a 20-year-old man who loved me without shame, and whispering, "Let's go, I choose you." Not for one night, not for a season, but for every day that I'm still alive and able to choose. There's a strange thing that happens when you've been called names your whole life. Too much, too emotional, too old, too late. Eventually, you stop seeing yourself in the mirror. You start seeing everyone else's opinions staring back at you. I used to touch my reflection with gentle fingers, trying to remember what I looked like when I loved myself. Before the kids, before the divorce, before the labels. And then came Eli. He didn't arrive like a knight. He didn't rescue me from a dragon. But he saw me. The first time I noticed it was after dinner in the tiny cabin we rented when we escaped together. I caught my reflection in the foggy bathroom mirror. My hair was wild, my eyes were tired but kind. My face had decades etched into it, life, laughter, heartbreak, healing. And I smiled. Not because I looked young, but because I looked real. Later that night, I asked him, "Does it bother you that I'm not what people expect?" He laughed in that soft, unbelieving way of his. "Expectations are cages," he said. "You're the first person who's ever made me feel like I could fly." That night, he kissed every scar, every wrinkle, every part of me I used to apologize for. And in the silence that followed, I realized something. It wasn't his love that changed me. It was what his love allowed me to see in myself. Not shame, not embarrassment, but beauty, depth, worth. I began wearing red lipstick again. I started dancing alone in the kitchen. I began answering my phone with laughter instead of, "What now?" The reflection changed not because the mirror lied, but because my eyes finally told the truth. And the truth is this: a teenage boy didn't fix me, but a young man with an old soul held up a mirror I'd been afraid to look into. And for the first time in years, I saw her. The woman I was before shame. The woman I became because of love. Me. It was a Tuesday when everything changed. Not because something dramatic happened. No one caught us in the act. There was no scandalous photo or public outburst. It was simple, almost embarrassingly simple. Eli held my hand. In public. We were walking through a small bookstore in town. I had found an old poetry collection I used to love, Adrienne Rich, faded pages, the smell of stories long read. And as I turned to show him, he just reached for my hand. No hesitation, no hiding, no shame. The cashier stared. A couple in the corner whispered. A young girl smirked and pulled out her phone. But Eli didn't let go. Not once. That night, the photo went viral. Someone had posted it online with the caption, "Grandma's dating a high schooler." The comments came fast, brutal, ugly, anonymous. "He must want her money. This is disgusting. Cougars like her are pathetic. She's grooming him. Call the cops." I sat on the floor of my bedroom and sobbed. Not because I was ashamed, but because I was afraid that he would be. When Eli saw me crying, he kneeled down, took my face in his hands and whispered, "I don't care if the world doesn't understand. I only care that you finally do." He kissed my forehead, then opened his phone. He typed paused, then posted a response. She taught me what love without fear looks like. She gave me a home when the world gave me noise. If that makes me a fool, I'll wear it proudly. That message, it didn't go viral. But something else did. Dozens, then hundreds of private messages came in from strangers around the world. "Thank you for showing us it's possible. I'm 60 and scared to love again. Your story gave me courage. They said I was too old to be loved. You proved them wrong." That was the moment I realized something. We weren't just loving each other. We were fighting for others too. For every woman told she was too late. For every man told he was too young. For every heart told it wasn't valid because it didn't fit the mold. I didn't ask to be a symbol, but I sure as hell wouldn't run from it now. I began wearing the dress people mocked in the comments. I walked hand in hand with Eli at every farmer's market park and cafe. When they whispered, I smiled, because we were no longer hiding. We were blooming, in the full light of day. I always thought my daughter Harper would be the first to understand. She's fiercely independent, a feminist, a believer in live and let live. Or so I thought. The day after the photo went viral, I got a text. "We need to talk, alone." We met at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. She didn't even let me hug her. She just sat down, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Is it true?" she asked. "Yes," I said softly. "I love him." Silence. "You're embarrassing yourself. And us. He's 19, Mom. He could be your grandson." I nodded, because I had expected this. What I didn't expect was what came next. Either you end it, or you're no longer welcome at family dinners. My children don't need this kind of confusion. Her words sliced through me. My grandchildren, my everything. The bedtime stories, the sticky fingers on my cheeks, the whispered secrets. Gone. Because I chose love. I looked at Harper with eyes I knew were welling up, but I kept my voice calm. I carried you for 9 months, raised you with every ounce of love I had. And now you want me to deny my own heart to make you comfortable. She didn't flinch. It's not about comfort, it's about decency. I walked out, not because I didn't love her, but because I finally understood something. For most of my life, I had shrunk myself to fit other people's definitions of acceptable. This time I wouldn't. I wouldn't deny joy just because it didn't look like someone else's. I wouldn't trade authenticity for approval. And I wouldn't make myself small just to be included. That night, Eli held me while I wept. He didn't speak, didn't try to fix it. He just stayed. Sometimes presence is more powerful than words. Days turned into weeks. Family dinners happened without me. Photos were posted that I wasn't in. Birthdays passed. No calls came. The silence wasn't just painful, it was punishing. But in that silence, I heard something I had ignored for decades. My own voice. And for the first time in years, it was steady, clear, and brave. Love had always been something I gave. Now it was something I claimed, even if it cost me everything, even if it meant rebuilding from scratch. Because what is love worth, if not everything? I had imagined a dozen versions of that moment, standing awkwardly at a stranger's doorstep, older than their son by decades. My hands sweaty despite the cool air. Would they glare? Would they whisper behind his back? Would they look at me like a scandal wearing lipstick? But what I met was a woman with eyes just like Eli's, and a man with silver in his hair and kindness in his handshake. "Hi," I said, offering a nervous smile. "I'm Sarah," his mother interrupted gently. "I've heard so much about you. No bitterness, no sharp edges, just warmth." His father gave Eli a firm pat on the back, then looked at me and said, "You've made our son lighter. I don't know what you did, but thank you." And just like that, the weight I'd been carrying of judgment, of whispers of shame, began to loosen its grip on my shoulders. Dinner was a quiet, home-cooked affair. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, laughter in the air. I noticed his mom watching us. At first, I thought she was looking for cracks. Instead, she said softly as we cleared the table, "He's been through more than we could reach, for years. But since he's breathing again." That's when I learned something I never expected. Eli had battled depression since he was 16. He had tried therapy, medications, everything. But what pulled him out wasn't treatment, it was connection. It was me. And maybe, just maybe, it was both of us choosing something no one else could understand. That night as we drove home, Eli took my hand. "I told you they wouldn't care about age." I looked at him. His face soft in the glow of the dashboard lights. His youth undeniable. But so was his depth. "I don't care what anyone thinks," I whispered. "But I needed to know I didn't ruin your world." He smiled. "You saved it." And in that moment, I finally allowed myself something I'd been afraid to feel. Pride. Not defiance, not rebellion, but quiet, earned pride in a love I had chosen, and that had chosen me back. It arrived on a Tuesday. A simple white envelope tucked into my mailbox, no return address, no dramatic markings, just my name in handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. John. We hadn't spoken since the divorce. He'd moved on quickly, married a woman closer to his age. Our split was clean on paper, messy in memory. I sat at the kitchen table, hands trembling slightly as I opened it. And there it was, a 3-page letter in his familiar slanted scrawl. The first line stopped me cold. I saw the photo of you and that young man. No hi, no pleasantries, just straight to the point. I braced myself for insults, for scorn, for bitterness. But what came next was the last thing I expected. "You look happy." And I'll admit, when I first saw it, I laughed. Not because of you, but because I didn't think you had that kind of boldness left in you. A pause? I was wrong. I've watched from a distance all these years, Sarah. And I realized maybe it wasn't you who shrank in our marriage. Maybe it was me who never allowed you to expand. That man, I don't understand your connection with him. But I've never seen that light in your eyes before. And I know now it's not something I ever gave you. I read the letter 3 times. Each time slower, each time with more breath stuck in my throat. It ended like this. "I'm not asking to come back. I just wanted to say, I see you now, and I hope you never apologize for being fully alive." I sat there for a long time, letter in hand, tears in my eyes. Not because I still loved him, but because I had spent years believing I had failed him. But maybe, just maybe, I had been too much for him all along, and now I was just enough for someone else. That night, Eli came home to find me staring at a candlelit photo of us framed on the mantel. He asked what I was thinking. I handed him the letter. He read it quietly. When he finished, he looked at me and said, "You deserve this kind of recognition every day, not just from the past, but from your present." And he kissed my forehead like it was a vow. I realized something then. Love isn't just what we feel in the beginning. It's what we're brave enough to claim after all the endings, even the ones we thought defined us. It was supposed to be a harmless morning segment. A local daytime talk show had reached out after our photo went viral, a snapshot of Eli and me walking hand in hand by the lake, the golden hour painting our wrinkles and youth in the same soft light. They said it was refreshing, unexpected conversation starting. I agreed to the interview cautiously optimistic. The producer said it would be a gentle piece about love beyond boundaries. But live TV? Well, it has a way of feeding on spectacle. We were 3 minutes into the segment when the host leaned forward with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes and said, "Sarah, you're 56 and Eli's 19. Don't you feel embarrassed?" The audience let out a subtle gasp, some in amusement, some in anticipation. The camera zoomed in. She continued, "People say this is a midlife crisis, that you're desperate for attention. What do you say to those people?" My ears buzzed, my heart pounded. I could feel my throat closing in that familiar way, the way it had in high school when a boy once told me I was too opinionated in my first job interview when the manager said, "You're pretty smart for a woman," and all those years with John where silence was easier than confrontation. But not today. Not anymore. I smiled. A real one. And I said, "Do you know what's truly embarrassing, spending half your life shrinking yourself to fit into other people's comfort zones?" The host blinked. I kept going. "They say I should be ashamed. But shame is not what I feel when I wake up next to someone who cherishes me. Shame was staying in a marriage where I was invisible. Shame was denying myself softness because the world said it made me weak. Love didn't rescue me. I rescued myself. And this young man, he just had the courage to see me when I finally stopped hiding. There was silence. Then an eruption of applause. Not scripted, not polite, real. I turned to Eli, who was backstage watching on a monitor, and he gave me the thumbs-up eyes gleaming with tears and pride. That day, I received hundreds of messages, some hateful, but more than that, hundreds of quiet whispers from women who'd stayed quiet too long. "Thank you for speaking for us. I've been afraid to start over at 50. Maybe it's not too late for me." The world doesn't know what to do with women who stop apologizing, but I do. We rebuild. We rise. We speak. We love loudly. I always knew this part would come. For months, I tiptoed around the truth with my daughter, Laura. She's 32, poised, polished, every inch the perfectionist I tried to raise. But beneath her carefully curated life, I saw glimpses of something harder fear maybe. Disappointment. A desire to keep everything as it should be. When I first told her I was dating again, she smiled guarded. When I mentioned Eli, her expression changed. "Wait, Mom, how old did you say he is?" 19, I answered gently. Dead silence. She hung up without another word. We didn't talk for 3 weeks. Then one Saturday, she came by unannounced. Her energy was clipped, her words tight. "We need to talk." I braced myself. She paced the living room like she used to when she was practicing debate arguments in high school. "Mom, this is embarrassing. My friends saw your photo online. Do you know what they're saying about you? About us?" I let her vent. Let her throw every headline and stereotype at me. Predator. Desperate. Reckless. Disgusting. Words that cut not because they were true, but because they came from her. Then she delivered the blow. "If you don't end this, I'm done. I can't have you in my life if you're going to keep humiliating me." She crossed her arms, waiting, expecting me to cave. But something inside me, something I hadn't known I possessed until recently, rose up. I stood. Not angrily, not defensively, just firmly. "Laura, I raised you to be strong, to think for yourself, to lead, not follow. But somewhere along the line, I forgot to teach you that love doesn't always look like what you expect." She said nothing. "You want me to choose between your comfort and my truth? I won't. I love you, but I won't shrink again, not even for you." Her eyes welled up. Mine too. She left. Days passed, then a week. I didn't call. I waited. And then a message. "I'm sorry, Mom. I just needed time. I'm scared. Not of him, but of losing you." I cried in the kitchen. Not because it was easy, but because it meant she saw me not just as her mother, but as a woman with her own story. Love isn't always accepted, but love that demands we erase ourselves. That's not love. It took losing parts of myself to see it clearly. Now I choose love with eyes open, even if it means walking through fire to keep it. It was my 40-year high school reunion, an event I had promised myself I'd never attend. Not because of bad memories, but because of how many parts of myself I had to bury back then, just to survive. Back in high school, I was the quiet one. The girl who followed the rules, got the grades, and never stirred the water. I didn't go to prom. I didn't date. I didn't rebel. I was the good girl in her mother's heels and her father's expectations. So imagine the stir when I walked into that reunion ballroom hand in hand with a 19-year-old who radiated confidence warmth and who looked like he belonged on the cover of a college admissions brochure. We were met with silence, the kind of silence that wraps itself around a room and dares you to keep breathing. Someone dropped their glass. A woman I hadn't seen since junior year biology leaned toward her friend and whispered not quietly enough. "Is that her grandson?" I smiled. "No," I said, clearly still holding Eli's hand. "That's my partner." That word partner felt radical, felt right. Not because I was trying to prove something, but because it was simply the truth. Eli didn't flinch. He looked around the room, nodded politely, and then did something I'll never forget. He led me to the dance floor. The music was a Motown classic, something smooth, full of soul. And as we moved together slowly, gently, I saw the whispers soften, the stares shift. It was no longer scandal, it was story. A story they couldn't quite explain. An old classmate, Karen, came over with her husband. "I've never seen you smile like that," she said. I smiled wider. "I've never had this kind of love before." Later, Eli and I sat under the string lights outside the venue. I was barefoot, heels in hand. He looked over and said, "They didn't matter, only you did." And that's when I realized something: the reunion wasn't about showing off or fitting in. It was about reclaiming the version of me that never got to be free in those halls. This time, I didn't need their approval. I had my own, and someone beside me who saw the girl I was and the woman I had finally become. When Eli told his friends about me, he didn't flinch. He didn't stammer, soften the truth, or dress it up to sound more acceptable. He told them exactly who I was, 56 years old, divorced, independent, and in love. They didn't take it well. The group chat blew up. Comments like, "You're ruining your youth. She could be your mom, man. What's she giving you that someone your age can't?" I wasn't surprised. I've lived long enough to know how the world reacts to women like me, women who dare to choose joy over judgment, freedom over fear. But hearing it still stung. Not because they questioned me, but because they questioned him. I could handle being misunderstood. I'd done it all my life. But seeing Eli caught in the fire for loving me, that hurt in a place I didn't even know could bleed. So I asked him, "Do you want me to stay away?" He looked at me like I'd insulted gravity. "They'll either understand or they won't," he said. But I'd rather lose friends than lie about who makes me happy. Still, I decided to meet them, not to prove anything, but because love is built in real life, not in hiding. We met at a small cafe near campus. They were younger, louder, full of the invincibility that comes with being 19 and thinking you know the world. But I didn't try to match them. I didn't pretend to be someone I wasn't. I asked about their dreams, listened to their music, even laughed at a few of their memes, though I didn't get all the jokes. And then Eli's best friend, Malik, asked the question they were all thinking. "Why Eli? Why not someone your own age?" I took a breath. Because he sees me, not who I used to be, not who people think I should be, just me now, messy, alive, curious. And in case you're wondering, he teaches me as much as I teach him. There was silence. Then Malik nodded slowly. "You're different, I'll give you that." But the ice broke. A week later, they invited me to join their trivia night team. Apparently, decades of life experience make you good at answering obscure 90s questions. They still joke, still raise eyebrows. But now, when they see us together, there's something new in their eyes: respect. Because love, when it's real, doesn't just defend itself. It transforms what surrounds it. And in the end, I didn't need to change their minds. Love did that for me. Meeting Eli's parents felt like walking a tightrope blindfolded, not because I was ashamed, but because they had every reason to be protective. He was their only son, barely out of his teens, and I was the woman old enough to remember dial-up internet and cassette tapes. Eli kept assuring me, "They're good people, a little traditional but open-minded, I think." Still, tradition has a funny way of wrapping itself around people's expectations, like vines, slow, silent, and stubborn. We were invited for Sunday dinner. I wore a soft blouse, no makeup, just me, natural and honest. I didn't want to appear younger. I wanted to appear real. The house was warm, filled with family photos, old jazz records, and the smell of roast chicken. His mother, Claire, greeted me with polite formality. His father, Greg, shook my hand with a grip that held both curiosity and quiet skepticism. We talked, ate, laughed even. I complimented the casserole and genuinely meant it. But there was an unspoken tension, like everyone was waiting for someone else to break the silence and say what we were all thinking. And then Claire did. She set down her fork, looked me square in the eye, and said, "I won't pretend this isn't hard for me. I dreamed of a daughter-in-law who'd be, well, younger. Someone who'd give me grandchildren. Someone I could teach my recipes to. But then I see how he looks at you. And I remember the first time Greg looked at me that way when I was 20 and the world didn't make sense unless he was in it. She sighed. If Eli has that with you, who am I to stand in the way of it? I didn't expect tears, but there they were warming the edge of my eyes. Because it wasn't just acceptance she was giving me, it was a mother's blessing. And that meant something sacred. Greg later pulled Eli aside. I watched them through the window. No raised voices, just a lot of nodding. Then a handshake, then a hug. That night, as Eli and I walked to the car, he said, "She likes you, a lot. She just needed to see you weren't trying to be something you're not." And maybe that's the lesson in all this. We spend so much time trying to make others comfortable with our love stories that we forget love was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to be true. And once it is, it changes everything it touches. We didn't have a wedding, not in the traditional sense. No church aisles, no white gown, no 100-person guest list with obligatory toasts and awkward dances. What we had was something else entirely, something that fit who we were, not who the world expected us to be. It was Eli's idea first. He said, "Why don't we just make this about us, just you and me? No expectations, no performance?" And I smiled because that was always the kind of love I dreamed of. Not loud, not lavish, just sacred. We booked a small cabin by a lake, 2 hours outside the city. The kind of place where silence speaks and the wind in the trees sounds like music. He wore a navy shirt and khakis. I wore a pale blue dress I'd had for years. No veil, no heels, just barefoot honesty. There was no officiant, no photographer, no bouquet. Just a letter I wrote him the night before, and a letter he wrote me. We stood under a tree that had probably lived longer than both of us combined. I read my letter to him, voice trembling, heart wide open. I didn't know I was still alive until you looked at me like I mattered. You gave my years meaning, not just time. He read his letter. Simple, sincere, with that soft-eyed, boyish truth I had come to love. I don't care what the world says. I care how I feel when I'm around you. And that's the most real thing I know. We placed rings on each other's fingers, not gold, not diamonds, just hand-woven bands made of braided cotton and a small silver knot. Fragile and strong at the same time. Like us. Then we kissed, and that was it. We sat on the dock, watching the sunset reflect off the water like liquid glass. We toasted with sparkling apple cider. And when night came, we lit a small fire and held hands, listening to the crackle and the crickets, and the kind of silence that heals. We called it a promise day, not a wedding, because the real vows were already written in the days we spent together. The nights we cried, the mornings we laughed, the 1,000 tiny moments we chose each other, when it would have been easier not to. And I realized something then. Love isn't always about proving something to the world. Sometimes it's just about proving to yourself that you're still capable of being brave. And choosing joy, wild, unapologetic joy, even when it doesn't look like the fairy tale others imagined for you. That night, I slept beside him on a mattress on the cabin floor, and I had never felt more married in my life. It's been 5 years since that day by the lake. 5 years of whispers behind our backs, and warmth behind our doors. 5 years of curious stares at the grocery store, and deep laughter at our kitchen table. 5 years of being that couple, the one people don't understand until they sit down and actually talk to us. But more than anything, it's been 5 years of love. Quiet, steady, real. And if I could go back to that moment when I first looked at Eli, when my friends rolled their eyes and my children stopped returning my calls, I would still say yes. Yes to the boy who saw the woman in me when others only saw my age. Yes to a love that doesn't fit a mold, but fills a soul. Yes to every difficult conversation, every awkward pause, every tear, and every breakthrough that taught us how to meet each other again and again through every phase of change. You see, Eli's not 19 anymore, and I'm not 56. We've grown together. He's now in his mid-20s, and I'm well into my 60s. The world still talks. But now, some of those voices have softened. Some of them, like my daughter, have even turned into unexpected allies. She came over last Thanksgiving and saw the way he looked at me when I forgot the stuffing in the oven. Not annoyed, not patronizing, just loving. She pulled me aside after dinner and whispered, "I still don't understand it, Mom, but I can't deny how happy you seem." And I told her honestly, that's all I ever wanted you to see. Because what people often forget is that love isn't about logic. It's about resonance. And Eli and I, we resonate. We fit not like puzzle pieces, but like different instruments playing in harmony. I bring the grounded wisdom of experience. He brings the fire of fresh hope. Together, we've created a rhythm that's imperfect, but deeply ours. I know time will catch up with us. I know I might leave this earth before he does. But I also know this. When I go, I will have known what it's like to be truly seen. And when he stays, he'll carry that knowing forward into everything he becomes. There's no shame in love that doesn't follow the rules. Only pride in the courage it takes to choose it anyway. So if you ever find yourself in a love the world doesn't understand, don't shrink. Stand taller. Because sometimes it's the ones who walk against the current who find the most extraordinary shore.